If betrayal had a sound, it would be the soft whisper of lace sliding from a velvet couch onto a polished marble floor on an ordinary Saturday afternoon in Lekki. If you're new to this channel, just subscribe now, and say it in the comment section. Amara Okafor had always believed she was blessed. 7 years of marriage had not dimmed the warmth in her home, it had polished it. Their duplex in Lekki stood in a quiet estate lined with trimmed hedges and guarded gates, the kind of place where children rode bicycles in the evenings and neighbors waved from tinted SUVs. Inside that house lived what many called a perfect family. Tunde, her husband, was successful in real estate development, confident without arrogance, generous without calculation, at least to the watching world. They had 2 children, Zara and Daniel, whose laughter often echoed down the hallway like music bouncing off marble tiles. And Amara, with her calm strength and effortless elegance, was the center that held it all together. That Saturday began like any other. The nanny had traveled to Ibadan for a family ceremony, so Amara decided to supervise the cleaning herself. She tied her hair into a neat bun, wore a simple fitted t-shirt and leggings, and moved from room to room with quiet efficiency. Music played softly from her phone, old Asa songs that made chores feel lighter. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting golden shapes across the living room floor. Tunde had left earlier for what he called a strategy meeting with partners. He kissed her forehead before leaving. "Don't stress yourself too much," he had said, adjusting his designer wristwatch. "Leave the heavy cleaning till Monday." Amara smiled at the memory. He always worried about her doing too much. Or at least he seemed to. She dusted shelves, arranged cushions, supervised the gardener through the window, and instructed the driver to wash the cars. Everything felt normal. Peaceful. Predictable. Then she reached the one room she rarely touched. Tunde's private lounge. It was a stylish, dimly lit space at the far end of the house, separated from the main living area by a frosted glass door. He called it his thinking room. It held a velvet charcoal sofa set, a glass bar stocked with imported drinks, framed abstract art, and a large flat screen mounted on a dark accent wall. Tunde preferred arranging it himself. Even the cleaners knew not to move things around unnecessarily. Amara hesitated before opening the door, not because she was afraid, but because she respected his space. Still, dust did not respect boundaries. She pushed the door gently. The faint scent of his cologne lingered in the air. She stepped in, scanning the room with the practical eye of a homemaker. The cushions were slightly out of alignment. A wine glass sat on the bar counter, rinsed but not properly dried. She made a mental note. She started with the sofa. One by one, she lifted each throw pillow, fluffing and patting them into shape. Her movements were unhurried, almost meditative. Then she picked up the last pillow, the deep red velvet one Tunde liked because it matched the art frame behind it. Something slid down. At first, she thought it was a handkerchief. It fell softly onto the couch before slipping to the floor. Amara stared. Red lace. Tiny. Delicate. Definitely not hers. Her body reacted before her mind did. Her heart began to pound, heavy and loud in her ears. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. She bent slowly and picked it up between her fingers. It was light. Expensive. The kind sold in boutiques, not random market stalls. She looked at it carefully, her expression unreadable. Not her size. Not her style. Amara preferred neutral tones, black, nude, sometimes white. Never bright red lace. And certainly not something this small. For a split second, her imagination tried to protect her. Maybe it belonged to a guest? Maybe Zara had carried it from somewhere? Maybe, no. She knew. The lounge. The secrecy. The late meetings. The deep cleaning 2 weeks ago before his colleagues visited. Her breathing steadied. 7 years of marriage does something to a woman. It teaches her the difference between doubt and instinct. And her instinct was screaming. Yet she did not scream. She did not cry. She did not throw the lace across the room. Instead, something far more dangerous happened. Amara smiled. It was not a joyful smile. It was calm. Controlled. The smile of someone who had just discovered information, not devastation. She walked to the bar, opened a drawer, and placed the underwear inside carefully. Then she closed it. Her phone buzzed. Tunde. My queen, his voice rang warmly when she answered. How's my superwoman doing? I'm good, she replied smoothly. Just finishing up some cleaning. You didn't have to stress yourself. I wanted to. There was laughter in the background on his end. Male voices. Clinking glasses. Are you eating? She asked. Later. Don't wait for me. I won't. She ended the call gently. For a few seconds, she stood still in the middle of the lounge, replaying his tone. Relaxed. Unbothered. Normal. If he was guilty, he hid it well. But so could she. Amara walked out of the lounge and continued cleaning the house as though nothing had shifted. She supervised lunch for the children. She helped Zara with homework. She braided her daughter's hair neatly while Daniel played with toy cars on the rug. When Tunde returned that evening, she greeted him at the door. You smell nice, she said lightly, adjusting his collar. He grinned. New perfume. You like it? Very much. He wrapped his arm around her waist and kissed her temple. Let's order something tonight. You've worked hard. Actually, she replied thoughtfully, I'll cook aguzi. It's been a while. His eyes lit up. Now that is why I married you. She laughed softly. As she cooked in the kitchen, stirring the soup slowly, her mind worked faster than her hands. She thought about bank notifications she had ignored. About business trips that lasted an extra night. About how protective he was of that lounge. Patterns began aligning. During dinner, Tunde talked about a new property deal in Ikoyi. He described square footage and profit margins. The children listened halfway, more interested in their food. Amara nodded at the right moments, asked intelligent questions, even teased him about overworking. Not once did her voice tremble. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Tunde scrolled through his phone while she applied lotion to her arms. You're quiet, he observed. Tired, she replied. He leaned over and kissed her shoulder. We should plan that Dubai trip soon. She turned to face him, studying his expression in the dim bedside light. Yes, she said softly. We should plan many things. He smiled, satisfied, and turned off the lamp. In the darkness, Amara stared at the ceiling. Trust, she realized, is not destroyed in one moment. It is cracked. And once cracked, every small pressure threatens to shatter it completely. But Amara was not interested in shattering. She was interested in understanding. And if understanding required patience, she had plenty of it. By morning, her shock had transformed into strategy. Not anger. Not hysteria. Strategy. Because whatever was happening in her marriage would not be handled with noise. It would be handled with precision. And for the first time in 7 years, Amara Okafor was no longer just a loving wife. She was watching. Amara did not confront Tunde on Sunday morning. She woke before him, as usual, slipped quietly out of bed, and stood by the window watching the estate come alive. Joggers in coordinated tracksuits passed by. A neighbor reversed his SUV out of the driveway. Sprinklers hissed over manicured lawns. Everything looked orderly. Controlled. Predictable. Inside her chest, however, something had shifted permanently. She went downstairs and began preparing breakfast, yam and fried eggs, the children's favorite. The domestic rhythm steadied her thoughts. Oil sizzling. Knife against chopping board. The clatter of plates. She had always believed that a woman who controlled her emotions controlled her outcomes. When Tunde entered the kitchen, stretching and yawning, she greeted him with a soft smile. "Good morning." He kissed her cheek. "Morning, chef. Smells amazing." She studied him discreetly. No tension. No guilt flickering behind his eyes. If he was hiding something, he wore it well. "Do you have meetings today?" she asked casually. "Just one in the afternoon," he replied, reaching for coffee. "Why?" "Nothing. Just planning the week." He nodded, scrolling through his phone. Amara noticed something new. He tilted the screen away slightly when she walked past. It was subtle. Almost unnoticeable. But she saw it. After breakfast, while he showered, she sat at the dining table with her laptop. She logged into their joint bank account portal. They had agreed years ago to maintain transparency in finances. At least, that was the agreement. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. Then she clicked. The numbers loaded slowly. Her eye scanned transaction history. There it was. Multiple transfers over the past 3 months. Large amounts. Millions of naira. Sent to an account she did not recognize. Her pulse quickened. She opened the transaction details. Recipient name, Adeobi Okafor. Tunde's cousin. The same Adeobi who had moved into their guest room 6 months ago for her NYSC program in Lagos. Amara leaned back in her chair. Adeobi? Why would Tunde be sending her millions? She replayed recent memories. Adeobi arriving with 2 suitcases and shy gratitude. "Thank you, Auntie Amara. I won't be a burden." Adeobi spending long evenings in her room. Occasionally coming downstairs to watch TV. Polite. Quiet. Amara had treated her like a younger sister. Another transfer. 2 weeks ago. The same week Tunde insisted on deep cleaning the lounge before colleagues visited. Her mind did not jump to conclusions. It assembled data. Step 1. Confirm frequency. She downloaded the bank statement for the past 6 months. Step 2. Check consistency. Transfers began exactly 4 months ago. Step 3. Check timing. Most transfers happened late at night. Amara closed the laptop slowly. Financial secrecy was not a small issue. It was a fracture in trust deeper than physical betrayal. Money meant for investments. For children's education. For future security. She stood and walked toward the staircase. Adeobi's room door was slightly open. Amara knocked gently. "Ada?" The young woman looked up from her bed, startled. "Yes, Auntie. Are you free later today? I was thinking we could go grocery shopping together." Adeobi hesitated briefly. I have CDS this afternoon." "All right," Amara said smoothly. "Maybe another time." She noticed something else. Adeobi's eyes looked swollen. Crying? Or lack of sleep? Amara filed the observation away. That afternoon, when Tunde left for his meeting, Amara made 2 phone calls. The first was to the bank. She inquired casually about joint account notification settings. The representative explained that alerts had been modified 3 months ago. Only one phone number now received debit alerts. Tunde's number. Amara thanked the representative politely and ended the call. The second call was to a private investigator recommended by a friend years ago during a casual conversation about business security. She did not accuse. She did not dramatize. She simply requested background verification on recent financial movements linked to Adeobi. Discreet, she emphasized. "Of course," the man replied. When Tunde returned that evening, he found her in the living room helping Zara rehearse a school presentation. "You're home early," she said lightly. "Meeting cancelled," he replied. Interesting, she thought. Because the bank transfers often happened on days he claimed meetings ran late. During dinner, she tested something. Adeobi seemed stressed, she said casually while serving rice. Tunde paused briefly. Really? Her eyes were swollen. NYSC can be demanding, he replied quickly. Too quickly. Amara nodded. Later that night, after the children slept, she entered the lounge alone. She opened the bar drawer and removed the red lace underwear. She studied it under brighter light. The brand tag was still attached. Imported. New. She folded it neatly and placed it in a sealed transparent bag from the kitchen. Evidence. Her phone buzzed. A message from the investigator. Initial confirmation, funds transferred to Adeobi used for private medical payments and apartment rent inquiry in Surulere. More details tomorrow. Medical payments? Amara's stomach tightened. Pregnancy? Treatment? Blackmail? Possibilities multiplied. She sat on the velvet sofa, the same spot where she had found the lace, and closed her eyes briefly. If Tunde was helping his cousin financially, why hide it? Why alter notification settings? Why move large sums secretly? Unless the help itself was something he could not explain openly. The front door clicked. Tunde entered the lounge unexpectedly. She looked up calmly. "Oh," he said, surprised. "I didn't know you were here." "Just rearranging," she replied. His eyes scanned the room quickly. Too quickly. "Please don't change too much," he said lightly. "I won't." He approached her and sat beside her. For a moment, silence stretched between them. "Is everything okay?" he asked. Amara met his gaze steadily. "Yes," she said. "Everything is fine." And in that moment, she realized something powerful. He was not expecting her to know. Which meant she had time. Time to gather. Time to prepare. Time to decide. The following days unfolded like a carefully choreographed performance. She cooked. She laughed. She attended a PTA meeting. She even accompanied Tunde to a colleague's birthday party, holding his hand, smiling for photos. But behind every smile was calculation. By Thursday, the investigator sent a full report. Adeobi was pregnant. 5 months along. The father? Unconfirmed. But hospital records showed Tunde listed as emergency contact and financial guarantor. Amara read the report twice. 5 months. The timeline aligned precisely with the first secret transfer. She did not cry. She did not rage. Instead, clarity settled over her like cool rain after heat. This was no longer suspicion. This was evidence of secrecy. Of betrayal. Whether physical or financial, trust had been compromised. She closed the file and looked at the calendar on her phone. Friday. Tomorrow. An idea formed, not impulsive, not emotional, but strategic. If truth wanted darkness, she would give it light. She picked up her phone and scrolled to contacts. Kunal. Bayo. Chika. Tunde's closest friends. Then she selected another contact. Mima Ronk. She began making invitations. Her voice cheerful. Her tone warm. A small dinner, she said. A surprise for Tunde. By the time she ended the last call, her plan was complete. This would not be a private confrontation behind closed doors. This would be clarity in front of witnesses. Not to embarrass, but to expose. Not to fight, but to define boundaries. On Thursday night, Tunde wrapped his arms around her in bed. "You've been extra sweet this week," he murmured playfully. "Have I?" she replied. "Yes. I like it." She turned slightly and rested her head on his chest. "Good," she said softly. In the darkness, her eyes remained open. He had no idea that tomorrow, under candlelight and polite smiles, the truth would step into the room. And Amara would be ready. Friday evening arrived dressed in elegance. From the outside, the Okafor home looked like it was hosting a celebration. Warm lights glowed through tall windows. Soft music floated into the driveway as cars pulled in one after another. The security guard directed vehicles neatly along the curb. Everything about the night whispered sophistication. Inside, Amara moved like a conductor guiding an orchestra. The dining table was set with precision, gold-trimmed plates, crystal glasses, folded napkins shaped like lilies. The aroma of grilled chicken, jollof rice, peppered goat meat, and vegetable soup filled the air. A dessert tray sat chilled in the refrigerator, waiting. She wore a deep emerald dress that hugged her figure without being loud. Her makeup was subtle, controlled. Her hair flowed over one shoulder. She looked like a woman hosting an anniversary dinner, not a woman preparing to dismantle deception. Tunde stepped downstairs, adjusting his cufflinks. "What exactly is this surprise?" he asked with amused suspicion. "You'll see," she replied playfully. The doorbell rang. Kunal entered first, broad-shouldered, confident, loud as usual. "My brother," he boomed, hugging Tunde. "You didn't tell me you were throwing a party." "I didn't know," Tunde replied, glancing at Amara. Bayo followed, calm and observant. Then Chika, elegant and reserved. Finally, Mama Ronk arrived, wrapped in a rich Ankara wrapper and head tie. "Amara, my daughter," she said warmly, embracing her. "God bless this home." "Amen," Amara responded with a gracious smile. Tunde looked genuinely confused but pleased. "What did I do to deserve this?" "You exist," Amara replied lightly. Drinks were served in the lounge first. The same lounge. Amara watched carefully as each guest stepped into the room. No one flinched. No one hesitated. Adeobi had not yet appeared. She had been asked to remain upstairs until called. Kunal poured himself whiskey. To unexpected blessings, he toasted. Glasses clinked. Amara's gaze lingered on him a second longer than usual. Dinner began shortly after. Conversations overlapped. Laughter filled the space. Mama Ronk spoke about church programs. Bayo discussed politics. Chika complimented the food repeatedly. Tunde leaned toward Amara. "This is really thoughtful," he whispered. She smiled. Halfway through the meal, when plates were partially empty and attention was relaxed, Amara rose slowly. She tapped her glass gently with a spoon. The soft chime cut through conversation. Everyone looked up. Tunde grinned. "Speech time?" Amara's smile remained calm. "Thank you all for coming," she began warmly. "I know it was short notice." Mama Ronk nodded approvingly. "I actually invited you here for a reason," Amara continued. Tunde's smile faltered slightly. "I wanted witnesses." Silence settled like sudden fog. Kunal laughed awkwardly. "Witnesses for what?" Amara stepped away from the table. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she walked toward the lounge. Every eye followed her. She disappeared briefly. The air thickened. Tunde shifted in his seat. "What is she doing?" he murmured. She returned moments later. In her hand was a small transparent bag. Inside it, red lace. She stopped at the head of the table. Tunde's face drained of color instantly. Mama Ronk's spoon paused mid-air. Amara placed the bag gently on the table. "I found this in my husband's private lounge," she said evenly. Dead silence. The hum of the air conditioner sounded louder than ever. Kunal cleared his throat. "Maybe it's," she raised her hand calmly. "Please." "I'm not finished." Her voice was not angry. It was steady. Controlled. "I'd like us all to help identify the owner." No one moved. No one breathed too loudly. Tunde swallowed. "Amara, this is not the time. When is the time?" she asked softly, meeting his eyes. Mama Ronk looked between them anxiously. Tunde? What is this? He opened his mouth but no words formed. Amara continued, before anyone panics, I want to clarify something. I am not here to scream. I am not here to accuse blindly. I am here for clarity. Kunal shifted in his chair. Bayo stared at the lace intensely. Chika looked stunned. Amara turned her gaze toward the staircase. Adeobi, she called gently. Footsteps echoed. Adeobi appeared at the top of the stairs, trembling slightly. She descended slowly, eyes already glossy with tears. The room's tension snapped tighter. Amara spoke again, voice softer now. I know this belongs to Ada. Gasps rippled around the table. Tunde jerked his head toward his cousin. Adeobi? Adeobi covered her mouth and began to cry. Mama Ronk stood abruptly. What is happening here? Amara remained composed. I also know, she continued, that large sums of money have been transferred from our joint account to Adeobi over the past 4 months. Now the shock deepened. Tunde looked at her fully for the first time, really looked at her. You went through my accounts, he asked quietly. Our accounts, she corrected. Kunal's jaw tightened. Bayo's eyes widened. Chika whispered, Jesus. Amara placed printed bank statements on the table. Neatly arranged. Highlighted. I did not confront you privately because secrecy thrives in silence, she said. Tonight, I prefer transparency. Adeobi's sobs grew louder. Finally, she spoke. Auntie, please. I was going to tell you. Tell me what? Amara asked gently. Adeobi fell to her knees beside the table. I'm pregnant. The word struck the room like thunder. Mama Ronk staggered back into her chair. Pregnant. Tunde looked stunned. What? Amara's expression did not change. Yes, she said calmly. 5 months. All eyes shifted to Tunde. He shook his head. No. No, this is not, Adeobi interrupted through tears. He didn't touch me. Uncle Tunde didn't, the room froze. He only helped me, she cried. Because the father refused responsibility. Silence. Amara's gaze moved slowly around the table. Who is the father? Mama Ronk demanded. Adeobi's eyes drifted toward one person. Kunal. His face hardened instantly. This is nonsense, he snapped. Adeobi pointed at him, shaking. You promised you would handle it. Kunal stood abruptly. She's lying. Enough, Amara said quietly. The authority in her tone silenced the chaos for a moment. She looked directly at Kunal. Medical records list Tunde as emergency contact. Financial guarantor. Why? Tunde ran his hand over his face. She begged me. She was scared. I didn't want scandal. And so you hid millions? Amara asked. I was protecting the family, he replied defensively. By deceiving your wife. No one spoke. Kunal's anger shifted into panic. I never said I wouldn't, you blocked my calls. Adeobi shouted. The polished dinner had dissolved into raw truth. Mama Ronk began praying loudly under her breath. Bayo leaned back, stunned. Chika whispered, this is unbelievable. Amara exhaled slowly. This, she said calmly, is not about infidelity. It is about secrecy. It is about decisions made in darkness. She looked at Tunde. If you can hide this, what else can you hide? He had no immediate answer. For the first time that evening, he looked small. The red lace remained on the table, silent but powerful. The dinner that began with elegance had transformed into revelation. And Amara, steady and composed, stood at the center of it, not as a victim, not as a spectacle, but as a woman who refused to be kept in the dark. The witnesses she invited had seen everything. and nothing would ever return to what it was before. For a long moment after Adeobi pointed at Cunnel, the room felt suspended in disbelief. The air conditioner hummed steadily, almost mockingly calm compared to the storm brewing around the dining table. No one seemed to know where to look. Cunnel recovered first. "This is madness," he snapped, pushing his chair back. "You're all just going to sit here and let her frame me?" Adeobi's hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the table. "Frame you?" "Cunnel, you were the one who said it was just one night. You said you would handle it." Cunnel laughed harshly. "One night? You're pretending like I forced you." "Stop it!" Mama Ronk barked, her voice sharp despite her age. "This is not a marketplace." Tunde finally stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Everybody calm down." But calm had already left the room. Amara remained standing at the head of the table, fingers resting lightly against the polished wood. Her face was composed, but her eyes were alert, taking in every reaction, every micro-expression. She turned to Adeobi. "When did you find out?" "For months ago," Adeobi whispered. "And you told Tunde?" Adeobi nodded miserably. "I didn't know who else to call. Cunnel blocked me. I was scared to tell my parents. I thought Auntie would hate me." Amara's expression did not soften, but it did not harden either. "So instead of telling me, you allowed my husband to move money secretly from our joint account." Tunde exhaled heavily. "I was trying to avoid scandal, Amara. She's family." "And I'm what?" she asked quietly. The question sliced through him. Cunnel shook his head, trying to regain dominance. "Let's not pretend this is about money. You found underwear and assumed an affair. Now suddenly it's financial control?" Amara's gaze moved to him slowly. "The underwear was yours to explain." Cunnel faltered. Silence. She continued evenly, "The lace was found in the lounge. The same lounge that was deep cleaned before you and the others visited 2 weeks ago." Bayo's eyes widened slightly. Chika shifted uncomfortably. Cunnel's voice lowered. "I didn't even go into the lounge that day." "But Adeobi did," Amara said calmly. All eyes turned back to Adeobi. She nodded weakly. "I went to talk to Uncle Tunde. I was crying. I must have left it there." Mama Ronk covered her mouth. "Jisoo." Tunde ran his hands through his hair. "I didn't want this to get out of hand." "It already is," Amara replied. The problem was no longer suspicion of infidelity. It had become something more layered. More dangerous. Cunnel paced near the window. "Fine. She got pregnant. We made a mistake. I was going to handle it. By disappearing?" Adeobi shot back. "I needed time. You had 5 months. Bayo finally spoke. "Cunnel, did you know Tunde was paying her bills?" Cunnel stopped pacing. No, Adeobi's laugh was broken. "That's a lie." Tunde's eyes snapped toward Cunnel. "You told me you'd sort it out quietly. And you believed me." Cunnel retorted. The tension turned sharp. Amara observed the exchange carefully. Tunde looked betrayed, not as a guilty man caught in an affair, but as a man who had miscalculated loyalty. That realization shifted something inside her. She addressed the room. "This is not a court," she said steadily. "No one here is being tried. But decisions were made without me. Repeatedly." She picked up the bank statements again and placed them firmly in front of Tunde. "Do you know what this money was allocated for?" she asked. He remained silent. "Our children's school fund. The land payment in Lekki. The renovation budget." Mama Ronk gasped softly. Tunde swallowed. "I plan to replace it." "When?" Amara asked. "Soon." That is not an answer. The room quieted again. Adeobi wiped her tears. Auntie, I never meant to cause this. You didn't, Amara replied gently. Secrecy did. Colonel scoffed. So what now? We sit here and cry. Amara's eyes locked onto his. No. Now we correct. Colonel folded his arms defensively. Correct what? You will take responsibility, she said plainly. Financially and publicly. He stiffened. Publicly? Yes. Adeobi looked shocked. Auntie, if you were man enough to create life, Amara continued, you are man enough to own it. Colonel hesitated. Tunde stepped in. Let's not escalate. Escalate. Amara turned to him. You escalated when you removed transparency from our marriage. He flinched. Mama Ronk stood slowly. Tunde, is it true? You changed account alerts. He avoided her gaze. She shook her head in disappointment. You were raised better than this. That stung him more than anything else. For the first time since the evening began, Tunde's composure cracked. I was trying to protect everyone, he burst out. If her parents found out she got pregnant out of wedlock, they would disown her. If people heard Colonel was responsible, his business would suffer. I thought I could manage it quietly. And in managing it, Amara said softly, you dismantled trust. He had no defense. Colonel's bravado faded into something smaller. What do you want from me? He muttered. Acceptance, Amara said. Responsibility. Reimbursement of every naira transferred. An acknowledgement that this is your child. Adeobi stared at her in shock. Mama Ronk nodded slowly. That is fair. Colonel looked around the table. No one was supporting him. Not even Beo. Fine, he said bitterly. I'll handle it. You already said that once, Adeobi whispered. The sting in her voice lingered. Amara walked toward her and helped her stand. You will not stay here, Amara said gently. Not because you are unwanted, but because healing requires boundaries. Adeobi nodded weakly. Tunde watched silently, his mind racing. The dinner had exposed more than he anticipated. Not infidelity, but misplaced loyalty, pride, and control. Amara returned to her seat. This house will not function in shadows, she said calmly. Not anymore. No one argued. The chaos had softened into exhaustion. Mama Ronk cleared her throat. We will pray. For once, no one objected. As they bowed their heads, Amara's mind was clear. This was no longer about scandal. It was about foundation. And foundations, once cracked, require more than apologies. They require reconstruction, or departure. She opened her eyes before the prayer ended. Across the table, Tunde looked at her, not angrily, not defensively, but uncertainly. For the first time in years, he did not know what she would do next. And that uncertainty unsettled him more than the confrontation ever could. When the prayer ended, the silence that followed felt heavier than the confrontation itself. No one reached for their glass. No one touched the remaining food. The elegant dinner had turned into a reckoning. Amara was the first to move. Thank you all for coming, she said quietly, her voice steady but no longer performative. I believe what needed to be said has been said. It was not a dismissal spoken in anger. It was a closing statement. Beo stood slowly. Tunde, we'll talk later. Chika gave Amara a long, searching look, one woman silently acknowledging another's strength, before picking up her purse. Colonel avoided everyone's eyes. I'll call you, he muttered to Adeobi, though there was no conviction in his voice. You won't need to, Amara said calmly. A lawyer will. Colonel stiffened but said nothing. Mama Ronk approached Amara first. She held her hands tightly. My daughter, I am ashamed. Amara squeezed back gently. You are not responsible for choices made by grown men. Mama Ronk's eyes filled with tears. Tunde is stubborn, but he loves you. Amara did not respond to that. One by one, the guests left. The front door closed. And the house, once buzzing with tension, fell into an almost unnatural quiet. Only 4 people remained. Amara, Tunde, Adeobi, and the truth. Adeobi stood uncertainly near the staircase, her face pale and swollen from crying. Ada, Amara said softly, go upstairs. Pack a small bag tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'll arrange for you to stay with my cousin in Sorelia temporarily. Adeobi blinked in surprise. You would still help me? I am helping the child, Amara replied. Not the secrecy. Tears slid down Adeobi's cheeks again, but this time they were quieter. I'm sorry, Auntie. I know. Adeobi went upstairs slowly. The sound of her footsteps faded. Now it was just husband and wife. Tunde remained standing near the dining table, staring at the printed bank statements as if they might rearrange themselves into a better narrative. You embarrass me, he said finally. Amara looked at him carefully. I exposed facts. You could have spoken to me privately. I tried, she said calmly. For months. Every time I asked about finances, you said don't worry. Every time I asked about late nights, you said business. Transparency died quietly in this house, Tunde. Tonight, I simply turned on the light. He sank into a chair. I was protecting family. And who protects me? She asked. He looked up at her then, really looked at her, and saw something unfamiliar. Distance. Not anger. Not rage. Distance. He exhaled heavily. What do you want? The question lingered between them. Amara walked away briefly and returned with a cream-colored envelope. Neatly sealed. She placed it on the table in front of him. I prepared this 2 days ago, she said. His brows furrowed. Prepared what? Boundaries. He opened the envelope slowly. Inside were legal documents. Separation papers. Already signed by her. His hands trembled slightly. Amara, I will not fight, she said evenly. I will not scream. I will not compete. But I will not live in uncertainty. He flipped through the pages in disbelief. You went this far? Yes. Over money? She met his gaze without blinking. Over trust? He stood abruptly. I didn't cheat on you. That is not the only way to betray someone. Her voice was calm, but each word landed with precision. You removed my access to financial alerts. You redirected funds allocated for our children. You involved yourself in a crisis without informing your wife. You made executive decisions alone in a marriage that was built on partnership. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Because he knew. She was right. I was going to tell you, he said weakly. When? She asked gently. He had no answer. Upstairs, a suitcase zipper sounded. The faint, ordinary noise made everything feel more final. Tunde ran his hands over his face. This is extreme. No, Amara replied. This is measured. He looked at the documents again. Are you leaving? Yes. For how long? Long enough to breathe without suspicion. His voice cracked slightly. And the children? They will not suffer. I promise you that. He stepped closer to her. You're throwing away 7 years. I am preserving the rest of my life. The calm in her tone unsettled him more than anger ever could. Amara, please. Let's fix this. She studied him quietly. Fixing requires more than regret. It requires rebuilding trust from the foundation. And right now, that foundation is cracked. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back, not dramatically, just deliberately. I need space, she said. Upstairs, Adeobi descended slowly with a small suitcase. Her eyes moved nervously between them. "I'll stay in my room tonight," Adeobi whispered. Amara nodded. "Thank you," Adeobi added softly before walking away. The front door clicked as she stepped out onto the balcony for air. Tunde and Amara stood in silence again. "I never meant to hurt you," he said finally. "I know," she replied. And she meant it. He had not acted out of malice. He had acted out of control. Out of pride. Out of the need to manage perception. But intention did not erase impact. "I'll transfer the money back," he said quickly. "Kunal will repay me. I'll restore everything." "It's not about restoration," she said gently. "It's about reliability." He felt the difference. She walked toward the staircase. "I'll move into the guest room tonight," she said. "Tomorrow, I'll take the children to my sister's for a few days." "Amara," she paused halfway up the stairs. "Yes?" For the first time that night, his voice held fear. "Is there anything I can say to make you stay?" She thought about it. About the years. The laughter. The shared dreams. Then she answered honestly. "Not tonight." She continued upstairs. Tunde remained alone in the dining room. The candles had burned low. The food had gone cold. The red lace underwear still lay inside its transparent bag on the table, a small object that had unraveled everything. For the first time in his life, Tunde Okafor had no strategy. No business plan. No persuasive speech. Only consequences. Upstairs, Amara closed the guest room door softly behind her. She leaned against it and exhaled. Not in pain. Not in triumph. But in clarity. She had not shouted. She had not fought. She had not lost control. She had chosen peace, even if peace required distance. And for the first time since Saturday afternoon in the lounge, her heart was no longer pounding. It was steady.